There is a moment in life when a person realizes something has changed inside them. It does not happen loudly. It does not happen suddenly. It happens quietly, after pain. Pain changes a person in ways that are often difficult to understand at first. When someone experiences abuse, whether emotional, psychological, or physical, something inside them begins to shift. The way they see the world, the way they see people, and even the way they see themselves starts to transform. Many people fear this change. They think that because they are no longer the same person they used to be, something inside them must be broken. But the truth is very different. Change after pain does not mean weakness. In many cases, it is the beginning of awareness and inner strength. Before abuse happens, many people move through life with a certain innocence. They believe in the goodness of others. They trust easily. They assume that kindness will be returned with kindness. This openness is not foolish. It is simply the natural state of a heart that has not yet been exposed to deep betrayal. But when someone is abused by a person they trusted, that innocence is shaken. Suddenly the world feels different. The mind begins to question things it never questioned before. At first, this can feel confusing. A person may ask themselves why they feel more cautious, why they observe people more carefully, or why they hesitate before giving their trust again. They may think that they have become too guarded or too distant. But what is really happening is that their awareness has grown. Pain has forced them to see patterns they could not see before. They begin to recognize behaviors that once seemed normal, but were actually harmful. Small signs of disrespect, manipulation, or control become clearer. This awareness is not something to be ashamed of. It is a form of protection that the mind develops after experiencing harm. The heart learns that not everyone deserves immediate access to its deepest trust. This lesson can be painful to learn, but it also makes a person wiser. Instead of moving through life blindly, they begin to move with greater consciousness. They observe how people speak, how they react under pressure, and whether their actions match their words. Pain also reveals something powerful about the human spirit. When a person survives abuse, they discover a level of resilience they did not know they possessed. In the middle of the struggle, it may feel like everything is falling apart. There may be moments of doubt, loneliness, and emotional exhaustion. But even in those moments, something inside continues to move forward. Something refuses to give up completely. That quiet persistence is strength. It is not loud or dramatic, but it is real. It is the part of a person that slowly begins to rebuild their sense of self. They start to question the negative beliefs that were placed on them during the abuse. They begin to understand that the hurtful words, the manipulation, and the control were not reflections of their true worth. As this understanding grows, the person begins to see themselves differently. The experience that once felt like it had destroyed them slowly becomes something that has deepened their perspective. They become more aware of their emotions, more thoughtful about the people they allow into their lives, and more respectful of their own limits. The change that pain created starts to shape a stronger and more conscious version of who they are becoming. After experiencing abuse, one of the most profound changes that happens within a person is the way they begin to see people and situations. Before such experiences, many individuals move through life with a natural trust. They assume that if someone speaks kindly, their intentions must also be kind. They believe that when someone promises care, respect, or loyalty, those promises will naturally be honored. This trust often comes from a sincere heart that believes goodness in others is as natural as goodness within itself. However, abuse disrupts this assumption. When someone who was trusted becomes the source of harm, the mind begins to awaken to a deeper understanding of human behavior. It becomes more attentive to the small details that once went unnoticed. The tone of a voice, the way someone reacts when they are challenged, the subtle attempts to shift blame, or the quiet ways someone tries to control a situation. all of these begin to stand out more clearly. This heightened awareness is not the result of bitterness. It is the result of experience. The mind has learned that not everything is as it appears on the surface. Words can sometimes be used to hide intentions rather than reveal them. Charm can be used as a mask for manipulation. Promises can sometimes be tools for gaining control rather than expressions of genuine commitment. As this awareness grows, a person begins to notice patterns. They start recognizing behaviors that once confused them. For example, they may see how some individuals avoid responsibility by blaming others. They may recognize how certain people use guilt to influence decisions. They may observe how kindness from some individuals appears only when they want something in return. These realizations can feel overwhelming at first. A person may question their own judgment, wondering why they did not see these patterns earlier. They may even feel a sense of embarrassment or self-doubt. But over time, something important becomes clear. Awareness is not a punishment for the past. It is a tool for the future. Through this awareness, a person becomes more thoughtful about whom they allow into their inner world. Trust is no longer given automatically. Instead, it is built gradually through consistent actions and genuine respect. People are observed over time, rather than accepted, immediately based on words alone. This shift does not mean that a person loses the ability to trust. Instead, their trust becomes more intentional. It becomes rooted in observation and understanding rather than assumption. They begin to value honesty, consistency, and emotional maturity in ways they may not have before. Another important change is that manipulation becomes easier to detect. The subtle pressure that once felt confusing now becomes recognizable. The attempts to twist reality or dismiss someone's feelings no longer pass unnoticed. When these patterns appear, the person who has experienced abuse often feels an inner signal that something is not right. This inner signal is the mind's way of protecting itself. It is the result of lessons learned through difficult experiences. Instead of ignoring this signal, a person begins to respect it. They listen to their instincts more carefully. They allow themselves to pause, observe, and reflect before becoming emotionally invested in someone's behavior. Over time, this deeper perception of people creates a quiet sense of clarity. The world begins to look different, not because it has changed, but because the person observing it has grown in awareness. Conversations are understood beyond the surface. Intentions are evaluated through actions rather than promises. The ability to see through manipulation, dishonesty, and emotional games becomes a natural part of how they navigate relationships and interactions. After experiencing abuse, one of the most important transformations that begins to develop within a person is the strengthening of boundaries. Before such experiences, many people move through life with a deep desire to maintain harmony with others. They try to avoid conflict. They try to be understanding, patient, and forgiving. Often, they give others the benefit of the doubt. Even when something inside them feels uncomfortable, they may silence their own feelings just to keep a relationship stable or to prevent disappointment in someone they care about. This willingness to tolerate discomfort often comes from kindness. It comes from a genuine desire to be compassionate and supportive. But when someone is exposed to abuse, this tendency to tolerate too much begins to reveal its dangers. The person starts to recognize that ignoring their own discomfort allowed harmful behavior to continue. They begin to see that every time they dismissed their inner voice, they were slowly moving further away from their own sense of self. In the early stages after abuse, this realization can feel overwhelming. A person may look back at past situations and see moments where they felt uneasy but chose to stay silent. They may remember times when they allowed disrespect, manipulation, or control because they hoped the situation would improve. These memories can bring feelings of regret or frustration, but they also become powerful teachers. They reveal how important it is to listen to one's inner awareness. As this awareness grows, the idea of boundaries begins to take on a deeper meaning. Boundaries are not walls built out of anger or resentment. They are expressions of self-respect. They are quiet decisions about what a person will allow in their life and what they will no longer accept. A boundary does not punish others. It protects one's peace. Someone who has experienced abuse begins to understand that their time, their energy, and their emotional well-being are valuable. These are not resources that should be given away endlessly without care. When a person learns this lesson, their relationship with themselves begins to change. They start to treat their own needs with the same respect they once gave freely to others. At first, setting boundaries can feel uncomfortable. A person who has spent a long time prioritizing the feelings of others may feel guilty when they say no. They may worry about disappointing people. They may fear that asserting their needs will create conflict or rejection. These feelings are natural because the mind has been conditioned to associate self-protection with selfishness. But slowly, through practice and reflection, a new understanding begins to form. Saying no is not an act of cruelty. It is an act of clarity. It simply means that a person is choosing honesty over silent resentment. Instead of allowing frustration to build inside them, they express their limits calmly and directly. With time, something remarkable begins to happen. The person who once struggled to defend their boundaries starts to feel a quiet sense of confidence. They realize that they do not need to justify every decision or explain every feeling in order to be respected. Their boundaries become simpler and clearer. They learn that not everyone will agree with them, and that is acceptable. Another change begins to appear in the way they evaluate relationships. Instead of focusing only on how much they care about someone, they start paying attention to how that person treats them. Respect becomes more important than emotional attachment alone. They begin to notice whether others listen when they express discomfort, whether they honor limits, and whether their actions reflect genuine care. This awareness naturally changes the types of relationships they allow into their life. Some connections may grow stronger because they are based on mutual respect. Other connections may fade because they depended on the absence of boundaries to survive. While this process can be difficult, it also creates space for healthier and more balanced relationships. As boundaries strengthen, a person also becomes more protective of their inner peace. They start recognizing situations that drain their energy or create unnecessary stress. Instead of forcing themselves to endure those situations out of obligation, they begin to step away. This does not mean they avoid challenges or responsibilities. It simply means they are no longer willing to sacrifice their emotional well-being for the comfort of others. Their communication also begins to change. Instead of suppressing their feelings until they reach a breaking point, they learn to express concerns earlier and more calmly. They develop the ability to speak honestly about what they need and what they cannot accept. This honesty often feels unfamiliar at first, but it gradually becomes a natural part of how they interact with others. Through this process, self-respect grows quietly but steadily. The person who once doubted their right to protect themselves begins to understand that their well-being matters, their voice matters, their comfort matters. They no longer measure their worth by how much they can tolerate or how much pain they can endure. Instead, they begin to measure their strength by how well they can honor their own values. They start recognizing that protecting their peace allows them to show up in the world with greater clarity and authenticity. When they are not constantly defending themselves from harm, they have more energy to invest in meaningful relationships, personal growth, and the life they truly want to build. Boundaries then become something deeper than simple rules. They become a reflection of self-awareness. Each boundary represents a lesson learned from experience, a reminder that the past has shaped a wiser version of the self. With every moment they choose to respect their limits, they reinforce the understanding that their inner stability is worth protecting. After experiencing abuse One of the most profound transformations that occurs is the way compassion and empathy are reshaped. Before abuse, many people approach the world with an open heart, freely giving kindness and care to those around them. They assume that their generosity will be met with equal warmth, and that their efforts to support others will be recognized and valued. This natural inclination toward compassion is beautiful, yet it can also leave a person vulnerable. When someone abuses that trust, the heart begins to understand the difference between genuine care and manipulation. Initially, this realization can feel confusing. A person may question their instincts, wondering if their empathy is flawed or if they are somehow too sensitive. They may feel guilt for having trusted too easily, or for having given so much of themselves without receiving the same in return. These emotions are normal, but they also mark the beginning of a deeper understanding. Compassion is not weakened by abuse, it is refined. After abuse, compassion evolves. It no longer functions blindly without discernment. Instead, it becomes guided by wisdom and self-awareness. A person who has endured harm learns to observe the intentions behind actions more carefully. They begin to distinguish between someone who is truly in need of care and someone who seeks to exploit kindness for selfish purposes. This distinction is subtle but powerful. It allows compassion to remain intact while protecting the heart from unnecessary harm. The growth of this wiser compassion often involves recognizing patterns in behavior that were previously overlooked. A person may notice how certain individuals consistently disregard boundaries, dismiss feelings, or manipulate situations to their advantage. They begin to understand that responding with empathy does not require ignoring red flags or tolerating mistreatment. In fact, it is a form of self-respect to exercise discernment in how compassion is expressed. This evolution also changes the way they respond to suffering in others. Before experiencing abuse, a person may have attempted to solve others' problems at the expense of their own well-being. They may have felt responsible for fixing the pain of those around them, even when it came at a personal cost. After abuse, compassion becomes more balanced. They still care deeply, but they understand that true kindness does not require sacrificing their peace. Helping others becomes a conscious choice, motivated by genuine desire rather than obligation or fear of conflict. The transformation of compassion also affects emotional boundaries. A person who has been abused learns to regulate how much emotional energy they invest in others. They understand that absorbing someone else's pain excessively can lead to burnout or vulnerability to manipulation. At the same time, they do not close themselves off completely. Their empathy is tempered with awareness, allowing them to offer support in a way that is sustainable and authentic. This creates a compassionate presence that is strong, resilient, and deeply human. In addition, this evolved compassion fosters a more profound sense of connection with the world. Experiencing abuse often brings the painful recognition that not all people act with integrity, but it also highlights the value of those who do. By refining their understanding of human behavior, a person can offer empathy more meaningfully to those who genuinely deserve it. They begin to cultivate relationships built on mutual respect, understanding, and care rather than one-sided expectation. The ability to give compassion thoughtfully becomes a form of empowerment, allowing them to create positive influence without being exploited. Wiser compassion also deepens self-compassion. Before abuse, many individuals struggle to forgive themselves for perceived mistakes or for failing to prevent harm. After abuse, the perspective shifts. They begin to recognize that vulnerability is not weakness, and that surviving hardship is an achievement in itself. Self-compassion allows them to treat their own emotions with the same careful attention they offer to others. They learn to honor their own pain, to acknowledge their feelings, and to nurture themselves as they would someone they love. This inward compassion strengthens resilience, fostering a sense of emotional stability that carries forward into all relationships. Moreover, the evolution of compassion changes how they interact with the broader world. Acts of kindness are no longer automatic responses. They are deliberate and intentional. Empathy becomes a skill guided by awareness, allowing them to support others in ways that are truly beneficial rather than enabling harmful patterns. By combining understanding with discernment, their compassion becomes a quiet power that influences others positively without making them vulnerable to manipulation. Through this process, the heart becomes both tender and wise. It is capable of deep care, yet fortified by experience. Empathy is no longer naive, but it is also not diminished. It is transformed into a strength that balances love with clarity, kindness with boundaries, and support with self-preservation. This evolved compassion allows a person to navigate life with grace, offering genuine care to others while maintaining the integrity and safety of their own spirit. Ultimately, the compassion that emerges after abuse is stronger than before. It is a compassion that understands pain intimately, recognizes the intentions behind actions, and chooses care thoughtfully. It is a form of wisdom that transforms vulnerability into insight and suffering into guidance. This transformation does not erase the memory of abuse, but it ensures that the heart continues to grow, offering kindness in ways that are both profound and protected, creating relationships and connections that are meaningful, resilient, and enduring. After surviving abuse, one of the most profound realizations a person experiences is that they are not the same as they were before, and this transformation brings a new kind of strength. The person you were before abuse moved through life with a certain openness, perhaps even naivety, trusting the world and the people in it without hesitation. That version of yourself may have believed that kindness and patience would always be reciprocated, but abuse teaches lessons that no book or conversation can impart, lessons about human nature, personal boundaries, and the value of self-respect. The process of becoming stronger begins quietly. At first, it may feel like a shadow of the old self, a version that is cautious, vigilant, and sometimes hesitant to trust. This is not weakness. It is the mind and heart adapting to protect themselves. It is the body's and soul's natural way of saying, I will not allow harm to enter this space again. Every decision to pause before trusting, every moment of reflection before acting, is an exercise in building resilience. These small steps accumulate over time, shaping a person who is less reactive and more deliberate. Strength after abuse is also rooted in awareness. The person who has been hurt begins to see patterns that were invisible before. They notice when someone's words do not match their actions, when gestures of kindness hide ulterior motives, or when behavior subtly undermines boundaries. This heightened perception is not cynicism, it is clarity. It allows the individual to make choices that protect their well-being and prevent repeated harm. In this way, awareness itself becomes a powerful tool. The more they understand about human behavior, the better equipped they are to navigate relationships and life situations without losing themselves. Another layer of this strength comes from resilience. Surviving abuse requires enduring experiences that can feel unbearable. It demands confronting fear, doubt, and often isolation. It requires confronting parts of oneself that may have been silenced or dismissed. Through this endurance, a person discovers a capacity within themselves that they might never have realized existed. They learn that they can face emotional pain, survive betrayal, and still emerge with dignity. This resilience becomes a cornerstone of inner power, a quiet confidence that carries forward into all areas of life. Strength after abuse is also reflected in boundaries and self-respect. A person who has been harmed becomes intentional about what they allow into their life. They learn to protect their energy and prioritize their mental, emotional, and physical well-being. This does not mean they become rigid or unkind. It means they respect themselves enough to create a space where growth and healing are possible. The choices they make are guided by a newfound clarity about their worth. Finally, strength emerges in the transformation of character. Abuse changes the way a person engages with the world but it does not diminish their potential. Instead, it refines their values, sharpens their instincts, and cultivates a deeper sense of purpose. They become someone who can face challenges with calm resolve, who can navigate relationships with discernment, and who can approach life with a wisdom born from experience. This transformation is subtle but profound, and it is the proof that even in the aftermath of pain, a person can emerge stronger, more aware, and more capable than ever before. In the journey after abuse, the person you once were may no longer exist, but that is not a loss, it is a transformation. Every scar, every lesson, every moment of resilience has shaped a version of yourself that is wiser, stronger, and more aware. You have learned to protect your peace, to honor your boundaries, and to see the world with clarity, without losing your capacity for compassion. The strength you now carry is quiet yet unshakable, rooted in experience and self-awareness. It is proof that even through the deepest pain, the human spirit can rise, grow, and become something extraordinary. You are not broken, you are awakened. And in this awakening lies your greatest strength.